Welcome to the Get to Know Memphis First United Methodist podcast. I am your host, Thomas First, and I will be interviewing people from our congregation so that through great stories, laughter, and tales of the experience of the God who is an active agent in our world, we can get to know one another. Welcome to the Get to Know Memphis First podcast. I am Tom First, pastor of Memphis First, and I'm excited today to have my friend Angela Strange as our guest on the podcast today. And I was trying to think, Angela, how long have I known you? It's been since the churches came together downtown, right? Like you were never a
Yeah,
part of either community.
yeah, yeah. I think the first time we visited was y'all's first Sunday. We had streamed you guys for about a solid year.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so we had been watching on Sundays basically after we were at another church and had some theological differences and knew we needed to be somewhere that was going to help grow our faith and not just constantly be something where we feel like, well, there's this, but I don't know about the.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we have been streaming and then we live right by where Bluff City met. So we were like, oh, perfect. And then you guys moved downtown the Sunday we were going to visit. But it's not far. It's not too far. Yeah.
Gotcha. It is always interesting. I have told my wife on a number of occasions, like if I weren't pastoring and I had to decide where we were going to go to church and we were trying to decide where we were going to church, like I think it would be an act of despair to like it would be a despairing act to find like try to have to be church hunting because it would take a couple of years and then you never know. Like sometimes you get embedded in a community and realize there's some weird something happening in it, and then it's also a matter of when you're thinking about leaving a congregation, it's like can I put up with this? Or, like what's the threshold of good things going on versus what can I put up with? So now, from what I understand about you, you grew up in the church, and I want other people to kind of hear some of your stories. So maybe we'll just start here. Do you remember the first person in your life who created an image of God for you?
I mean, obviously my parents,
Mm,
both my mom and dad are real deal Christians. They didn't know the terminology in the 80s of incarnational living, but they've
mm.
always been that. So when that kind of theology came along, it was like, oh yeah, I know that's like what my parents have
They
lived.
were like, duh. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what we've been doing.
This is all I've known. So, and the older I get, the more I realize like how rare that is.
Mm,
It wasn't weird for me because it's all I knew as a child. And then as an adult, I've carried that on. And so, for me, it's just like, I'm like, what's the problem? Like, I just never understood why people had a problem with it, because it was normal to me. My mom and dad, both of them, I mean, I have like very distinct memories as a child. We never didn't have someone living with us until I was like in my mid-teens. And that was really just because it was like at the point where like puberty hit and it was like, if I have to keep sharing a bunk bed with my sister, someone's gonna die. So at some point we kind of stopped, in our mid-teen years so that we could have our own rooms. But we lived in a tiny house. It didn't seem tiny because that's all
mm.
we knew.
Yeah.
Uh, we always had somebody living with us, and generally speaking, they were someone that was in recovery, a single mother who had nowhere else to go and needed help with their child and needed a family. They were always people that needed a family. And so family to us was never about blood. It was
Yeah.
always the bigger picture. And so for me, that was kind of my first, my image of God was very much family, father, loving, because I was very fortunate. to be raised in that manner.
What a
My
blessing.
and my parents always kept a like for instance, at the dinner table, which dinner table was always a big deal in my family, and I appreciate that. Partially because it was a time for us to allow other people into our family. And so we were always feeding other people, and people were always over for dinner. But we had a huge map of the world over our table, like on the
Yeah.
wall. I mean, every night, my entire childhood, we would have to pick a country. And I forgot the missionary book. But do you remember there was like this missionary book thing where it talked about different countries and
Oh, no, this is interesting.
I don't remember like whose it was, but it was like a missionary thing that was put together of how to pray for that country.
Oh, that's cool.
But we learned all about it. My dad, of course, the 80s encyclopedia, we'd look up the stats on the country and we'd look up pictures while we ate. And then we always prayed for that country over dinner.
Oh, wow.
I was very good at geography.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good at geography as a child, but it was always an outward focus at my house. So it was always that our faith wasn't just a personal faith in Jesus so that we go to heaven. It was
Yeah.
for here and now. And so that type of stuff. And then my mom truly loved and still is this way. My mom's kind of crazy with pink hair and
Mm.
she's a hoot.
She's
But
awesome.
literally loves everyone. The more difficult you are, the more my mother is probably going to be drawn to you and love you. My whole life, like my mom was the mama of Mitchell Heights. She taught at Treadwell High School and she was literally like mama to so many people. And that was in every sense of the word. It wasn't just, oh, loving. It was if I got to slap you upside the head, I'll do that too. I'm gonna make sure you're good and feed you some dinner
It's a
and
gritty love.
you home. It was a gritty love. But yeah, like my earliest childhood memory was mom taking me to Hurt Village because there was a single mom that I don't know how my mom met her, but she was definitely a teenager, school age. She was living by herself in Hurt Village. She had just had a baby. We'd go every Sunday. My mom would take her stuff, car seats and clothes, and pick her up for church. She'd come over and spend all Sunday with us at our house, just being a part of our family. And like my earliest childhood memory is going into Hurt Village and stepping over a person that was passed out drunk, laying in their urine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't have air conditioning, and it was July. It was like, deep heat. And having to step over there and just remembering the smell and how horrible it smelled, and then going in and seeing her apartment, which had no air or lights at the time, and just realizing like she lives here. I mean, that's one of my earliest
Wow.
childhood memories was just getting to see how other people lived that were less fortunate than how I was born. And so,
There seems
um,
to be several deeply Christian themes that are coming together here. There's a welcome that your family was always hospitable,
yeah,
that there's also an outward focus, the mission orientation and the willingness to serve and help others. But also one of the things that I think about just as we're talking is it seems like you learn from a really young age not to be afraid
yeah,
of the different places that your faith took you.
absolutely. Even the people that lived with us. I mean, I'm not going to say it was all peaches and creams at times. There were some sacrifices that happened, and my sister and I, we've had some bad things happen to us because of how we've lived. You learn through things, and there's wisdom and things that you learn as you go. But yeah, there was never seeing the world as bad people that we need to be scared of or
Mm,
protected from. It
yeah,
was always that we have something really good that we can bring to others,
yeah,
and we have to show it and love people and that others had value. And so even if they didn't line up with our belief system or come from where we came from or look how we looked, everyone was seen as a child of God and value. And so I took that in personally as well. So I grew up pretty for the most part, very secure kid, very much comfortable in my own skin and who I was, no matter who was around or what I was around.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident. I really owe that to my parents, but it shaped my view of God, absolutely. Because I got to see, I can't say that my parents were hypocrites or
Yeah.
harsh and judgmental, horrible people. That wasn't the case. And
Such a blessing. Yeah.
they're still doing it. Like, I
They're
mean,
still doing it. Yep.
they'll be that way till the day they die. So,
Now,
yeah.
your dad was a charismatic pastor,
Yep.
pastor in a charismatic church. So, from what I understand about that tradition, there's a pretty significant emphasis on experience. Do you remember as a child having experiences of God?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, my whole childhood, our faith was very outward and it was very emotional. My dad, if you looked at him, like he's very, like he always has been, even when he was young, he was just, I'm not going to call him dorky, but he looks like he would be a very straight, conservative white guy. Like
Mm,
he looks like he would be uptight and there are some of that there for sure. But he always has been very, when it comes to God, very emotional. And I think because he naturally is not that way, if that makes
mm.
sense,
Yeah.
that his experience with God is just very different than like who he is as a personality. And I
Yeah.
think that charismatic Holy Spirit type stuff really helped my dad and still helps my dad just be free where
Yeah.
maybe otherwise he would not be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think there was that. My mom's always been, we were at the Micah meeting last night, and if you didn't know and you just heard her, you think, oh, we've got a, African American lady sitting back here, she's
Yeah.
always been, amen, she's just a vocal person. When I was growing up, she used to have a whistle in worship. We still laugh. Yes. Diesel.
I've never heard of that. Uh,
In charismatic 80s, it's like tambourines. We're like, nope,
yeah.
we have whistles.
I want her to bring a whistle next time she comes to church with you.
Oh, she will. She had like a round sound whistle she used to wear to church.
That's so
Um,
fun.
yeah. So, both my parents, I think, when it came to God, they were more hungry for not just words, but to experience it.
And
Um,
that allowed you to also have experiences then?
yeah, for sure. There were definitely times that I didn't understand what was happening to me, but I don't question,
Yeah.
it was God. And I definitely have had experiences that make no sense. And
Yeah.
I still to this day, I mean, speak in tongues, I do all that. Like it's
Mm,
still
yeah,
a
yeah.
part of faith and it's maybe a little different and operates a little different than it used to, but it's still very much a part of my faith, especially I'm going through cancer and there's times that you don't have words and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to say that I speak in tongues
Yeah.
at times and I think it gets you into a meditative state, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very contemplative in a lot of ways.
I was going to
Um,
say, probably partially the value of it is the elimination of all other things happening in your brain so that you can enter into this rest with
I
God.
mean, it really is. And I do all the meditating and yoga and all that too. And there is a sense like that's not a stretch for me because I'm like,
Right.
oh, yeah, I grew up
Yeah.
this way. We called it this, but you
Yeah.
know, yeah. So not to totally freak people out because I know
No, I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
some people are weird about that. And I get it. And a lot of people in that world are, off the deep end in a lot of ways. And
I think there's something to be said for, particularly in the mainline tradition that the Methodist Church is a part of, is this recognition that God is bigger than the boundaries we put over God,
yeah,
and that even John Wesley, our sort of forefather, like there started being these charismatic experiences at his revivals, and people were like, "Shut that down," and he was like, "No, like who are we to control what the Spirit of God is doing?" So
yeah,
now you've
yeah,
talked a lot about your parents, and you can answer this question with one of them if you want, but is there a person in your life that you look at as like a spiritual hero or a role model?
sure. Obviously them. But outside of them, I mean, I've got several. Dr. John Perkins,
Mm,
who is a very well-known civil rights activist and author. He's been very close with my family for a long time. His teachings of incarnational ministry have
yeah.
absolutely shaped my life. I think he put into words how we were already living, but we didn't know how to like communicate about
Yeah.
relocation, redistribution, very much just kind of like the beginning early church, like how they lived. And that's how we kind of seek to live. And so, John, we call him Grandpa John. He would be definitely up there. And then there was a lady that just passed away recently. She was up in DC. Her name was Dr. Janelle Getchis. She started a thing called Christ House, which is a respite care. It's for homeless people. She was a doctor. Her husband and her were going around DC feeding. This was like in, gosh, early 80s, feeding the homeless and things like that. And she would try to do like doctor visits, right there in tents and things. And then she'd go and work at the ER. And what she would find is these men would come in and they would get treatment and they have to send them right out to the street.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have insurance. We're not going to let them just sit here. They're
Right.
not sick enough to keep them in the hospital, but they're going to die if we send them back into the streets. She started a thing called Christ House, which is respite care, which is where these men could come and women could come and actually heal and be cared
Wow.
for and have a plate. And then they would give them resources and help them get back on their feet. And then
Wow.
her and her husband actually moved into the building where essentially it wasn't like a shelter. It was like people who were sick, like they have diabetes and they just had their leg amputated.
Yeah.
And they need a period of time where they have somewhere they can just safely rest and be cared for
Right.
until they can get back. And anyways, her and her husband, they lived there until she passed away. I think she was like 83 of cancer just this past year. Like the Mother Teresa of DC is.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, they were Methodist. Her husband was a Methodist minister,
Mm,
and they lived in that building. They raised their kids in that building with a bunch of homeless men.
wow.
And she's the most humble woman I think I've ever met.
That's
Um,
incredible.
he just saw a need and like jumped in and did it. And so she's someone I definitely really look up
Yeah.
to. And someone living, and she has no idea about this, but she's the head of the Memphis Teacher Union currently. She's been a school teacher in Memphis City schools forever since
Who's
the
this?
80s.
Say that again.
Her name's Coach Marable.
No. Okay.
Coach Liz Marable. If she ever runs for election for school board, you got to vote on her. She's the most incredible
Good.
human being, but she's a single woman who has been teaching since the 80s,
Wow.
and she has literally been a mother to hundreds and hundreds of students. And she's just one of these people that she would never say she's a minister. She would never want any recognition for what she's done, but I have literally watched this woman from afar just disciple so many young women. And most of her people are now teaching and teachers and doing the same thing that she was doing. And now she's head of the teachers union. So I completely look up to her because she's
That's
just one of
awesome.
those I can go, that's a real Christian.
Yeah.
Like she's the
That's
real deal.
somebody who gets it and they put their career and their life on the line and said this matters.
Yeah,
Angela, when you think about God now, growing into adulthood and all that you've gone through, like what kind of images come to mind when you think of God now?
very merciful,
Mm,
very just, very faithful. In the midst of everything I've been able to see and then things I've personally gone through myself, the God that I know and the God that I see and the God that I hear and the God that I feel is very merciful
mm.
and loving and faithful even when we're not. I don't think anyone can change my mind on those things.
Huh. That's incredible. That's incredible. So you said that you and your husband Ira had been watching us online for a while, and then you decided to come down and attend with us and you've been with us. What is it about the congregation or the church that attracted you or allows you to experience God in a way that feels right to you or allows you to be who you are?
Yeah, so my husband and I, we still stream you guys just about every Sunday. We haven't been on a Sunday morning for a while, but we still very much learn a lot from the word,
Mm,
specifically with your teachings. For me, when I think of where you guys, I don't think it's a mistake that y'all landed where you landed downtown. I think that, and especially when congregations are smaller, sometimes people can kind of think, well, why aren't we bigger? Why aren't we growing? Or why? And I think that there's a very clear answer for that for Memphis First. I think that you guys are in a unique position and are called to be a prophetic voice to the whole city.
mm,
And even if the numbers aren't massive on a Sunday morning, you guys' presence there is very much a prophetic picture. There was one Sunday in particular that you had someone who was, I believe, transgender, unhoused, and you called them up to serve communion.
mm,
I bawled my eyes out
mm,
too. I'm crying now thinking about it
yeah.
because it put me in a position to receive
Mm,
from someone that I know so many Christians wouldn't even speak to.
yeah.
And it brought such beauty and value to that person to be able to administer communion and give something and say, I'm a child of God and you're a child of God and we're children of God together was a beautiful thing. And I do think that you speak very straightforward. I don't know how to say it, but the way that you have broken down the word for us, it was a lot of the things that were happening in our hearts. We couldn't like figure out how to package it up and how to verbalize exactly what we were thinking. But for us, it really helped us when we came to a place that we were deconstructing our faith and
Mm,
deconstructing some of the things and reconstructing is really
yeah.
people have demonized deconstructing. Doesn't mean we don't believe in anything. It means that we had enough value to our faith for us to revisit some things and think about what it is that we want our faith to look like and should be, and what are some things maybe we should change. So for us, your teachings in the word still to this day, it made us kind of fall in love with the Bible again in a way that I think for a while we were getting just tired of the same old messages and looking at the same old scriptures in the same old way and thinking something doesn't feel right here. This doesn't add up with my experience. Some of these teachings and having the fruit of some of that bad theology, having the fruit of that come forth in my life and
Yeah.
realize some of that is coming from some really crappy way of thinking about God and church and
Yeah.
what Christian means. Your teaching definitely helped us just break open and relook at the word and re-fall in love with the word of God. I think there are things that you say, and it's not just you, the fact that you have a lot of older white folks
Yeah.
that are in Memphis, Tennessee, and they sit and listen to what you have to say. And I mean, I grew up where there wasn't a lot of old people that I knew that weren't so prideful to say, maybe I was wrong on this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I need to change, like to see older people continually choosing to grow in their faith was so encouraging to me. But I think it's a real prophetic picture for the city in a lot of ways that no matter what our age is or what our status is, whether we're unhoused or whether we're wealthy senior citizens or whatever it is, I think it's a very real prophetic statement to say,
That's
hey, there's a different way of approaching things. There's a different way of doing things. And so, yeah, I want to encourage, I guess, the congregation not to see yourself as small, but
mm,
what you're doing with the unhoused, what all the ministries that are in those buildings, your location, the type of people that are there are a huge prophetic statement to
It
all of the,
matters.
it matters.
Yeah.
And, and so, yeah, I just want to encourage y'all to just
Mhm.
keep doing and keep streaming because that stuff, it matters getting the message out there and it helps other churches as well.
Well, I'm gonna have you come preach for me sometime because I feel like what you just said was incredible and just right in my heart. So thank you so much for just giving us your time and letting us get to know you a little bit more, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you.